Hi, I have the great pleasure to have some time here with Dr. Brian Dixon. We're going to pick his brain a little bit, and he's going to be educating on the activated athlete. And we want to help you understand things that you can be doing to continue doing the activities that you love to be doing all the way through life. What breaks my heart is the athlete that kind of has to stop doing what they love because their body is breaking down. This information is going to be so valuable that if you guys, want to share this with others, feel free to. I would love for you to do that. So Dr. Dixon has quite an extensive and impressive background. I'm going to just sum it up for you, and I'm going to have to read it because I can't remember all of this, but he earned his Ph.D. in molecular and cellular biology from Oregon State University in affiliation with the Linus Pauling Institute. His research focused on the underlying biochemical mechanisms of the aging process and the therapeutic potential of R-alpha-lipoic acid. Dr. Dixon went on to do his postdoctoral work at the Linus Pauling Institute evaluating the bioavailability of lipoic acid in young and elderly adults and its role in improving deficits known to occur with age, along with several scientific peer-reviewed manuscripts that cover antioxidants, cellular signaling, gene regulation, NRF2, weight management, and more. Dr. Dixon is also the co-inventor of 7 filed patents, and with more to come. He is now the Senior Vice President of Research and Development for Lifevantage, and we are so honored to have him on board. Dr. Dixon is passionate about health and nutrition and fitness, and he really walks the talk. And I had the pleasure to meet Dr. Dixon and his beautiful wife, Andrea, in, of all places, Ireland. We had lunch together, and I realized that, wow, we have a lot in common, as far as some activities we love to do, like snow skiing and mountain biking, and I know he's a runner, and we even talked about salsa dancing. His wife, Andrea.
I'm a forced salsa dancer.
From Colombia. I know, but so am I. I am a total salsa dancer wannabe. So I am going to keep encouraging us to go to Colombia and do some salsa dancing.
Let's go.
For sure. So because you're an athlete, Dr. Dixon, and I know a lot of people, who will be watching this, they are athletes or just stay very, very active. Let's focus on that person, and I would love for you to just give some general tips for staying healthy and fit, first of all. And I know you did a blog on our Lifevantage page that
it might have been the first assignment I had when I came to Lifevantage, was write up a blog with kind of your 9 most important health tips.
Yeah, so I'm going to ask you about a couple of these. I found them very interesting. So your first tip was always make healthier choices.
Always make healthier choices. In our world today, we're so bombarded with choices. In fact, an interesting fact I came across, there's never been more calories on the face of this earth than there are right now. We've gotten really good at preserving food. We've gotten really good at growing food. So we have so many choices around us. And I know it can be overwhelming, but if you can kind of just break it down into an either or a binary choice, and if you're always choosing the healthier of the 2 options, that's going to start to get you down the right path if you're not there already. So just when you're faced with a choice, choose the healthier choice. And that even goes for eating your meal. When you look at your plate, maybe you're out to eat, I always start by eating the healthiest thing on the plate first, and then kind of work my way down the health scale until I feel full.
That's a good idea. And there's so many different opinions on health. So that's why I like your number 2, and that's eating in Technicolor.
Yeah, eating in Technicolor, or I've also heard it referred to as eating the rainbow. We all know that eating fruits and vegetables is so healthy for us, and the compounds that are the most healthy for us tend to be the compounds that give fruits and vegetables that bright, vibrant color. So we also want to try to get as many different those compounds as possible. So the more fruits and vegetables that you can eat that are the more different kinds of colors, the better off you're going to be.
Yes. I always say, there's a reason Mother Nature provided us the foods that contain all the antioxidants, right, that we need.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
It just, now I'll get on a soapbox a little bit, but there really is an arrogance in science and medicine. And, being generous, how long has science and medicine been around? I mean, modern medicine, maybe 100 years, generously 200 years. So why do we think we know everything better than what Mother Nature intended? And it all has to start with a healthy diet.
Exactly. And then your next one is staying hydrated.
Yep, staying hydrated. I know we want to talk mostly to athletes, and there's some interesting studies that have been done where if we're dehydrated, well, if we dehydrate by 3 to 5%, so by my standards, that would just be around 5 to 10 pounds. You lose about 10% of your contractual muscle strength. And so if you were to look at, just say, a track and field runner, that 10% difference, that 10% addition in time would be enough to move someone from winning the gold medal to dead last in their race. And then the other question I get quite often is, well, how much water should I drink? And there's all different sorts of recommendations out there. Drink 8 glasses a day, drink 64 ounces per, whatever it is. I don't necessarily love that one size fits all, because if you are an athlete, odds are you're going to be sweating more, your metabolism is going to be higher throughout the day. So what I say is just listen to your body, and forgive me if it sounds crude, but we have this built-in hydrometer. So, and that's our urine. We should be looking at the color of our urine, and it should be clear to just barely a little bit yellowish. So kind of pay attention, and we should be going to the restroom about every 1 to 2 hours. And so that's really the best measure if somebody's hydrated or not. And that needs to be consistently throughout the day, not just at lunch or in the morning, but stay hydrated throughout the day as well.
Very good advice, and a good reminder. I think people forget to look at their pee, and they really need to be, and their poop. And then really going into moving your body, which, we're talking to athletes specifically really in this video, and don't ignore the cravings. I like this one.
Yeah, don't ignore the cravings. There's been some very interesting studies that have been done on cravings, and I'll tell you about a couple of studies that have been done in rats. You can never do these types of experiments in humans because we have this massive frontal lobe that kind of gives us this overriding decision-making power. But there were some studies that were done in rats, and what they did was deprived their diet of some essential amino acids, and they usually did it in pairs. So they would remove 2 of the essential amino acids out of the rat's diet. And then what they would do is hang water bottles around the cages, and they would put different amino acid combinations in all of these different water bottles. And what inevitably ended up happening is the rats, almost in every case, ended up drinking from the water bottle that had the missing amino acids in it. So they went on to do some follow-up studies. They could do some brain scans. They could put little probes into their brains, and they were able to track it to a specific part of our very most ancient brain. And what would happen is when they weren't getting the right amino acid, this part of their brain became really active, and it would trigger kind of a foraging or feeding response. And so they would go look around ultimately until that craving for these amino acids that they were missing were ultimately satisfied. And they would go on and do it different combinations. They would remove different amino acids. And like I said, in almost every case, they would drink out of the correct bottle that had the missing amino acids. And so why is all that important maybe to human health? Well, we've obviously never been heavier than we are today, and this is throughout the world. And so one hypothesis for that is that maybe we're not eating all natural foods. We're eating more out of boxes and heavily processed foods. And when they're processing foods, there's a few tricks that they can use to preserve those foods for so long. They can dehydrate them. So most of the foods in boxes are dehydrated. They can be high in salt. That's just really a preservative. But then they also tend to strip out a lot of the vitamins and minerals, which also would restrict bacterial or yeast growth. So as we're eating out of boxes more and more and more, people can become increasingly nutrient deficient. And so one hypothesis why we're so heavy is because our food is so nutrient deficient that is triggering this foraging response to try to find the vitamins and minerals that we may be missing from our diet. So just eat healthy, eat
That's fascinating. Eat healthy, stay hydrated for sure. Yes. And then supplementation. And I think supplementation has completely changed, right? I mean, the old school ways of just vitamins and, you know, high doses of A, C, and E, which our bodies don't recognize. So I love this, obviously, because that's what we're all about with Lifevantage, just kind of going into this new technology.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the athlete, you know, the person who is, you know, wanting to stay fit and, again, doing everything they can to avoid injury. And what does NRF2 activation and NRF1 activation, specifically those two, mean for the athlete?
Yeah, Chrissy, if you don't mind, can I take a step back kind of into that supplement realm?
Yes, please.
You know, you said that not the old school way of thinking. And I was just down in Mexico City lecturing on disruptive innovation, and especially disruptive innovation in nutrition. And just for fun, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, I'm sorry, but do you happen to know when the last essential vitamin was discovered? You might be surprised and think of a pretty big number.
When it was discovered?
Yeah, when? Like in what year?
Oh my gosh, I bet you I'm going to say like 1950.
You're incredibly close. The last vitamin discovered was in 1948, and it was vitamin B12. And then I think vitamin K was discovered in 1938 and folate in 1942, I believe. So literally, we've known for 70 to 80 years everything that the human body has need from an essential vitamin, mineral, and amino acid basis. So there really hasn't been much innovation in nutrition until probably just the last 10 or 15 years. And the two things I think have been the most innovative recently have been things around nutrigenomics, so utilizing nutrients to activate, you know, the health mechanisms that our bodies have inherently inside of their DNA. And I'd also throw, I think, the microbiome in there as well. Some very interesting research that's coming around how important those hitchhikers we have living on in us are when it comes to overall health. So this nutrigenomics angle and microbiome angle is, for me, it's incredibly interesting and incredibly exciting.
Absolutely. And for those of you who don't know what nutrigenomics is, it's, you know, what we were talking about earlier about how essential plant foods are for us, your antioxidant plant foods that our bodies recognize. And so it's compounding things from plant nutrition to change gene expression. Is that a good explanation?
That's so beautifully put. And just to, sorry for being so long-winded all the time, but just to kind of put that into a bigger context, scientists have known forever that eating fruits and vegetables is so incredibly healthy for you. But in that arrogance or ignorance that is science and medicine, they always want to tease one thing out of these different fruits and vegetables and look for the magic bullet that makes things so healthy. You know, so they go for the low-hanging fruit. So they look for the things that are present in the highest concentrations. So yeah, there's health benefits with vitamin C, for example. We also know the fiber that you're getting from fruits and vegetables is incredibly healthy. But with all of these individual macronutrients, if you will, that they've teased out of these fruits and vegetables, they've still haven't been able to replicate the health benefits of fruits and vegetables. So in the last, like I say, around 15 years, maybe just a little bit longer, they started to look at these compounds that were found in fruits and vegetables in much lower concentrations. And scientists, they never dreamed that they would be having the health benefits that it turns out that they are. So when you start looking at these compounds that are present, and like we were talking about earlier, most of them are the molecules that give fruits and vegetables their color. So when they start looking at these compounds that are present in really very low concentrations, relatively speaking, to like vitamin C and some of the other things that are in there, and more than that, they're also not very bioavailable, so we're not absorbing them very well. But even more than that, they're metabolized incredibly quickly. So they get into our bodies and they get excreted right away. So this baffled scientists for a number of years is how could these compounds present in such low quantities have these massive health benefits to humans? And it turns out it's because many of them are working through this nutrigenomic angle. So they're activating through various cell signaling pathways, the communication networks inside of our cells, to ultimately be able to turn on our genes, and why it's so incredibly interesting.
It's so fascinating. So specifically, let's say NRF2, our protandim NRF2 activation is a product in nutrigenomics. So how is that different than just taking, eating plant-based foods and herbs, and, it contains turmeric, green tea, bacopa, milk thistle, and ashwagandha root.
Yeah.
So how is it different than just eating those things? I know a lot of people that take turmeric and pour it in everything.
Yeah, I would say it's different for a couple of reasons. And one is, at least in the American diet, the Western diet, we're not eating a lot of, let's say, ashwagandha. Sure, we might be adding turmeric on there. But what we have been able to do is leverage science to be able to look at the health benefits of not just those 5 herbs that are present in protandim NRF2, but most importantly, their synergy. So coming back to that nutrigenomics angle, it's very easy to look at gene expression and whether or not genes are actually turned on as a result of giving these different nutrients. So we can go look at, let's say, cells in culture. We can add the individual components and we can see some activation of these health or survival genes or antioxidant genes or detoxification genes, however you want to call them. But what's so great about our product is it's able to work in a synergistic effect. So you get this massive upregulation of these so-called survival genes or antioxidant and detoxification genes.
Mm-hmm. And the increase in glutathione, by 300%, I mean, that's a really big deal. And so for the activated athlete, how important is glutathione?
I'm impressed about glutathione. I spent the majority of my time in graduate school studying glutathione. I think it's the most important molecule that nobody's ever heard of. And just to put it in perspective, other than water in the human body, there's no other single molecule that's present in higher concentrations than glutathione. So glutathione is so incredibly important to us. It does a number of things. I'm trying to catch myself from slipping back into hard scientific talk. But what it does is, one, it's really setting, here I go. It's setting it's called the redox status of the cell. Okay. So we're a very reducing organism. So what do I mean by that? So as we're metabolizing foods, we're capturing electrons. Electrons are negatively charged. So that's a very reducing environment. In fact, our bodies, for all the biochemistry to occur, it has to be in this very reducing state. So the opposite of reducing is oxidizing. So if you think about a car maybe sitting out in the field somewhere rusting, it's being oxidized. So our bodies work incredibly hard to fight against the oxidation that's happening. And the fact we live in an oxygen-rich world, we need oxygen to breathe for our metabolism. We're constantly fighting this battle of staying reduced versus this constant state of oxidation that we're faced with. So it is a major provider of what they call the reducing equivalence so that all the biochemistry can occur. That's the complicated thing that glutathione does, but more maybe less abstract is glutathione is one of the most potent antioxidants that our bodies have. And what's interesting about glutathione is it's actually a protein. So we can't actually get glutathione from the diet because our bodies view it as any other protein and it breaks it down into its single amino acid components. So you can't take glutathione supplements and expect to see massive increases in your glutathione levels. What we need to do is activate the genes that are actually making glutathione to increase our levels and then to keep as much reduced glutathione around as possible. But then the last very important function that glutathione has is that it's also acting as a detoxification molecule. So an analogy I like to use is one of antibodies. So if, let's say, some foreign invader comes into our cell our bodies will stick a antibody onto that foreign body. And it's basically been tagged and marked with this big strobe light that signals to the cell that we have to get rid of this foreign invader. Well, glutathione works in a very similar way. It gets attached to a lot of these various toxins that we might be exposed through our everyday lives, and it ultimately triggers them to be further metabolized so they're less toxic and ultimately excreted from the cell.
Wow. And no, it's fascinating. And we lose glutathione. Even the healthiest person, we lose it every year, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely. That was a major axis of the aging process that I was studying during my time at the Linus Pauling Institute as a graduate student and postdoc. Was you see the ratio actually declining as we get older and older. So just to put it into some simple terms, it's about 100 to 1 when we're young. And by the time we're in advanced age, it can be as low as 30 to 1. So we're losing the fight against that constant oxidative insults that we're exposed through.
Wow. And just by eating a lot of foods containing antioxidants, right? A lot of fruits and vegetables and plant-based foods, can we increase our glutathione? Or
there are a couple exceptions, and probably the most well-studied would be the sulforaphane that might come from cruciferous vegetables, things like Brussels sprouts, cabbage, broccoli. Those have relatively high levels of sulforaphane, and you can get some activation, but you have to eat an incredible amount of broccoli and cabbage and Brussels sprouts. I love them, but I don't know how much everybody out there loves them.
I do too. But so just to be clear, you guys, I mean, by taking Fortana Nerve 2, it is increasing glutathione by 300%. We're naturally losing that as we age, and there's really no way to bring that back up. There's really no way for our bodies to manufacture that other than activating Nerve 2. So this is huge. And again, thinking about the athlete, can we talk about the inflammation? Like by increasing glutathione, by activating Nerve 2, bringing down inflammation? Because I think that's what, in the end, happens to a lot of athletes, is that they have all these joint conditions and their bodies break down.
Yeah, you know, in a former life, I used to work very, very closely with the United States ski and snowboard teams. I also work very closely with the Women's Tennis Association. And do you know what their number one concern is? It's not injuries in the traditional sense of the word, but it's actually overtraining. So the sports organizations that are really well equipped, really well versed in biochemistry and nutrition, you know, they're measuring the state of an athlete's overtraining or training status when they're coming into the gym. And back at the U.S. ski team, for example, if an athlete came in that day and they did their initial assessments and they said, nope, today's not the day, they would send them home and literally just say, go rest for a little while. And a lot of that does come because of the inflammation that can result from this really just intense exercise that they're going through. So, you know, it's interesting facts, but athletes are 2 to 3 times more likely to just get the cold and flu, for example, just because their bodies are in this constant state of being run down and need to be repaired. But the inflammation that's most important to an athlete would be what they call delayed onset muscle soreness, or DOMS is the more common name. So ask the audience, are you more sore the first day after extreme exercise or the second day? And I think everybody would agree it's that second day, right, that you're more sore. And that is 100% due to the inflammatory response that happens. And what is happening in the case of DOMS is it's actually kind of the ancient part of our immune system that's trying to do good, but it ultimately ends up doing harm. And the reason that happens is as we're exercising, we're tearing and ripping our muscles apart. And it turns out one cue to be able to attract this part of your immune system is it can literally smell, if you will, that a cell has been ruptured. Well, the immune system assumes it must be because of some sort of infection that's going on. So it will send a whole bunch of these immune cells to the site of the muscle injury, thinking it needs to go combat these foreign invaders. Immune cells work by killing bacteria and viruses by putting out a lot of free radicals and oxidants. And they really are indiscriminate killers. So as these immune cells are now inside of our muscle tissue, they're spewing out these free radicals and oxidants. And instead of killing bacteria or viruses, they're actually further damaging the muscle. And this is exactly why you get more sore the second day after the first day. So keeping that immune system really in a nice, even balance is so important, especially for the athlete.
That's huge. And that's where gut health comes into play too. But, our athlete friends and Dave and I, included, that's one of the main things that we've noticed is after taking, Protandim Nerve 2 and Nerve 1, and of course the probiotic, but really just the recovery is so much quicker. I mean, we really don't get that soreness after a hard workout.
Yeah, and
that's like we're 30 again, and we're not.
If you ask any elite athlete, they'll say that recovery time is the most important thing because they just want to keep increasing their volume, right? But if they're sore or they're overtrained, they can't put that volume into their workouts. And it's been very well documented in the scientific literature that if you can increase your antioxidant defenses and in a sense put these antioxidants in between this immune attack and your own host or muscle tissues, you can minimize and mitigate that DOMS effect that's happening. And so they're more able to bounce back and get right back to the gym or whatever their sport might be.
That's awesome. So you had mentioned like cellular energy. And is that now talking about the NRF1 pathway, like that, the ATP of the cell?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're talking about cellular energy, you are literally only talking about the mitochondria. And maybe I should say, really with the exception of anaerobic exercise, but even a lot of athletes who are competing in an anaerobic sport. So, anything with like a quick sprint, right? Like swimming sprints or running sprints, you're anaerobic, but they're even also training a lot in their aerobic capabilities. And most sports out there are actually very anaerobic as well. And that just means whether or not you can utilize oxygen to make energy. And so if you're utilizing oxygen, by definition, that means that energy is being made inside of the mitochondria. And just to put it in perspective, when we're aerobic, somewhere between 95 to 97% of the energy that our bodies make is made inside of the mitochondria. So looking after the health of the mitochondria is incredibly important. You want to make sure you're providing the nutrients that the mitochondria need to metabolize our food, to utilize the oxygen we're breathing, to ultimately make energy for ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so how does our Protandim Nerve 1 help with that? I mean, we really are building up cellular energy, rebuilding our mitochondria.
Yeah, I would say it's working in two very unique ways. So it's providing a number of nutrients that the mitochondria absolutely have to be able to metabolize our food. It's also some of the ingredients are important for the electron utilization that our mitochondria need. So there's something inside of the mitochondria called the electron transport chain. Another big complex scientific term. I apologize, Christy, but maybe to put it a little more simply, as we're metabolizing food, it's ultimately making it into the mitochondria. And then basically what the mitochondria are doing are breaking the bonds of that food as it's going through the Krebs or the TCA cycle, however you want to refer to it. And then our bodies are capturing that electron, utilizing that energy to do work, and ultimately making ATP for the cell. But that electron has to make it a couple different places through the mitochondria, through this electron transport chain. And if we don't have those right components in there, the electron transport chain isn't going to work as efficiently as it could. So the first would be by providing a lot of these nutrients that are absolutely required for energy production in the mitochondria. But then the second very interesting component of Protandim NRF1 is the nutrigenomic approach that's also built in. So in addition to those nutrients that are providing the mitochondria with these essential nutrients they need, we also know that them and others are also turning on genes related to mitochondrial health. And as I kind of mentioned, the mitochondria are utilizing oxygen for energy production. So the mitochondria are the whole reason that we're breathing air. So we're bringing this nasty compound into our bodies, oxygen, to be able to utilize for energy. But in the process, there are also free radicals and other oxidants that are made. And even the healthiest of mitochondria are producing some level of free radicals and oxidants. But what's been shown is as we get older, the efficiency of the mitochondria don't work as well. And somewhere around 1 to 2% of all the oxygen we breathe is ultimately converted into free radicals and other oxidants. So what we want to also try to do is remove those mitochondria that aren't working as efficiently as possible and replace them with younger, healthier ones that become more efficient as well. And so we've been able to show in some of our research studies that we are activating these genes responsible for the mitochondrial turnover.
So cool. I know we just have a few minutes left. So we talked about, just like eating and the importance of just needing to take it to the next level with, activation. And I guess I have one question. Some of the really kind of healthy people that are taking, say, the NRF2 and the NRF1 and even the probiotics, sometimes they're waiting to really feel something differently. What we know, right, and 100% of the times and 100% of the cases, especially with the NRF2, is that it is reducing oxidative stress by an average of 40% in the first 30 days. So some people might not just feel that, but we know it's working to protect us. So is there anything else you want to add to that? Like,
and it's
stop taking it if you don't feel anything.
Yeah, it's hard, and they refer, just to use it as an analogy, but like they refer to high blood pressure as the silent killer. I mean, maybe outside of an occasional headache or something, what does high blood pressure really feel like, or what does high cholesterol really feel like? And so I've heard people have great results right away on the product, and then other people report not feeling anything. But what I can say is that, when we look at the biochemistry, when we look at the gene activation, those things are happening. What's probably the case in, especially athletes, they tend, not always, but they tend to eat better. And it's really kind of coming down to your baseline. And because athletes are exercisers, their biological age might also be just a little bit younger than the average population as well. So it really depends on where we're meeting people. And so if someone's, on a poor diet, maybe extreme exercise, whatever, they're more likely to feel something right away. Whereas maybe an athlete who's eating healthier, they might not necessarily feel anything, but the biochemistry is still going to be going on. And then it might just be these kind of secondary or indirect effects that they might notice: sleeping better at night, that faster recovery that we were talking about. And then the other thing to caution people on is, we do these studies and we can say, the aging process starts in your 20s or your 30s or whenever it might be. Like I mentioned, a dedicated athlete, their biological age might be a little bit younger. So maybe they haven't gone as far down that slope as somebody who's a little bit older or not living a healthy lifestyle.
Right.
The problem is we never know exactly when those declines in, say, glutathione might be happening, or some of the other things we see changing with age. And so it's really, at that point, a protectionist approach or a proactive approach to somebody's health, that, you're going to see your glutathione level start to decline, but you may not be able to feel it. So if we can kind of keep all those levels topped off, even if you might be just a little bit lower, we know that people can experience significant health benefits because of that. And it's like you said, it's just about preserving health. When we were doing our aging research back at the Linus Pauling Institute, we never talked about increasing lifespan. We always talked about increasing health span and trying to keep people as healthy and their quality of life around for as long as possible. And so people who want to take a proactive approach to their health, this is just a great way to go about doing that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I really do believe that your information you provided today is really going to help educate that person. And that's the most important thing, is someone to be their own health advocate. They've got to take the health in their own hands, understands the science, and again, being proactive and not waiting until it's too late.
Yeah.
So thank you so much again for your time. This is, we've taken a lot of your time. I so appreciate you. And anyone viewing this, get back to the person who invited you to watch this video if you have any questions at all whatsoever. So again, thank you, Dr. Brian Dixon, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, Christy, absolute pleasure. So all the best, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
Absolutely. It's been fun. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.